What's up guys, it's Joey. So today I want to talk about my Peace Corps experience, what it was really like picking up everything, moving to another country, and starting a whole new life there. So for those of you that don't know, the Peace Corps is an organization from the American government that basically provides volunteers to countries that ask for it in need. So they work in 5 main sectors, which are education, health, community development, economic development, and agriculture. So it's mainly there for 2 things. One, to provide help for these countries that ask for it, then also it's a diplomacy thing so that these countries like the United States more, essentially. So I wanted to talk about this for 2 main reasons. One, it was one of the most impactful and amazing experiences of my life, and I loved it so much, so I wanted to share that with you guys. And then also, if you are someone thinking about going into the Peace Corps, I wanted to give you like kind of a real representation of what it's like through the eyes of a volunteer. So I was an education volunteer in the country of Liberia, working as a high school teacher, but I'm not going to focus too much on the actual country of Liberia because I've already done 2 videos on that, talking about the food, the culture, what it was like living there, the landscape, all that kind of stuff. So if you're interested in that, go ahead and watch those and then come back to this video, because in this one I really want to focus on what it was like being a Peace Corps volunteer. So I'm going to talk about like the training and my school and what it was like working there, other volunteers, other projects I had going on, to give you a representation of what it's like being a Peace Corps volunteer in another country. And Peace Corps' slogan is the toughest job you ever love, and I totally agree with that. So I want to focus on both sides of that to paint a realistic picture, the toughness and the challenges and all the struggles of moving to another country and working there, and then also the amazingness and why I loved it so much and why I would totally do it again in a heartbeat. But I do think any country you run into, there are going to be problems, there's going to be issues, so I think it's realistic to talk about them. So I don't want to just gloss over these problems, because if you are a Peace Corps volunteer, you're going to run into these things, and I think in any country like that. These are my own experiences. Every Peace Corps journey is different. Even within the same country, you're going to face different problems and things like that, so keep that in mind. But let's go ahead and dive in. So I got a comment on my other video asking what my actual motivation was for joining Peace Corps, so I think that's a great place to start. So I was back in high school, in about sophomore year of high school, and I just remember starting to tell people like, yeah, after college I'm going to go into the Peace Corps. So I don't know why or what kind of influenced me to do that. I don't have a point where I was like, yes, this is what I'm going to do. I just remember slowly over time saying like, yeah, that's my next path, and that was kind of the journey I'd created for myself. In college and things, I started building my resume to go into the Peace Corps because they are pretty selective and they look for a certain type of person. That's why I took that research position in Cambodia that I talked about, and also that's why I took an internship in Chile and lived there for 4 months. So I wasn't actually building a resume towards like my career goals, but I was trying to prove to Peace Corps that I could do this. I could live in other countries and do that. So my senior year, I went ahead and applied, and when you're applying, you can kind of go ahead and select where you want to go or what you want to do, and I just clicked I would go anywhere and do anything because I really didn't have a preference, and I kind of wanted to go wherever they saw fit. I had the idea that I really wanted to go to Africa and I wanted to work in education, but if they didn't see me there, I wanted to leave it up to them. So about 2 weeks later, I got this email saying I'd been matched to this country of Liberia. I had no idea where that was. I did a quick Google, saw it was in Africa, and I saw I was going to be working as a high school chemistry teacher, so I was like, that is perfect. It's kind of exactly what I wanted, and that I had an interview coming up with them. The interview is a little bit different than a normal job interview because they're not so much focusing on like your job as a high school teacher as much as they're focusing on like, are you going to stay and are you worth investing in, because they are going to train you for 3 months. They're going to fly you over to this country. So they put a lot of time and effort into you, so they want to make sure you're not going to be impacted by the difference in culture and you're okay being alone, because the isolation is something major, is that you are taken out of your country and put kind of by yourself out there in the middle of nowhere. So they do kind of focus on that aspect of it, is like mentally you're okay with all this stuff that's going to be going on. So I finished up the interview and it went great, and a couple days later I got accepted. But then there's like a whole year-long thing of like doing all the paperwork, getting all the medical stuff, doing the background checks, and that takes a long time and it's a big process. So that's also kind of a thing that weeds out a lot of people, because they accepted about 80, I think, into our program, and only 55 ended up actually flying to Liberia, because a lot of people either aren't fit medically or mentally, or background checks, things happen, or they just don't complete everything. That's a big thing also, because it is a lot to actually do to get there. So my program was set to leave 3 days after I graduated, and I kind of really liked that because it didn't give me any time to like freak out or think about what was actually going to happen. I was so focused on graduating, finishing up everything with school, that I didn't even like pack or do anything until after I graduated. So those last 3 days were like frantic packing, figuring out what I need to do, getting flights in order and all that kind of stuff, and just kind of figuring it all out. So I never really had time to like think about leaving until it was actually like the day up. I was like, oh my gosh, I'm moving to Liberia. Like, what the heck? And the first thing you do is they fly you to DC to meet everybody, and you stay there for 2 days with all the other volunteers, and it was so much fun, and because it's kind of like our last hurrah in the States, and we all just became friends there. And they make it very much so that you're not doing this alone. Like, you're not actually flying to Africa alone. By the time you're actually on that flight, like, you're with a bunch of people you know, and you're all in it together. And I actually got seated next to like one of my best friends that I met at staging. So that was really cool that they kind of provide that support system from the get-go, and then we all hop on that flight together to go to Liberia. And when we touched down, guys, that's when it was like really real. Like, we were in Africa. and that was our life now. So your first 3 months of service is training. So they staged us at this little compound in the city of Kakata, which is outside the capital, one of the other major cities there. And it's kind of like where they hold your hand and get you ready for everything that's gonna happen. So first thing, we pretty much instantly moved into our host family's house. So they put each of us with a host family all around the city. So my host family was amazing and I loved my time staying with them. And my mom, she still calls me all the time. And I had 7 little brothers and sisters. So I had Jesse and Naomi and Blessing and Comfort and Martha Lynn, Josephine and Augustine. And I just love spending time with them because I brought a bunch of games. So we would play cards and Connect 4 and just all these different things. And it was just like, that was really cool. Even though when you move in, like there's still that language barrier because I didn't speak Liberian English yet. So it's kind of just like trying as best you can to communicate, but they're so happy and friendly all the time that is whatever is gonna happen, it's okay. And right after you move in with your host family, they have this big naming ceremony where your parents get to give you a tribal name. So my host family was Pele, so I got a Pele name of Kole. So all my brothers and sisters called me Brother Kole, and that became my name for those 3 months. But you are part of that family, so I had my chores, I clean my room, I do the cooking, all that kind of stuff. They really teach you the step-by-steps of like being on your own in this country. Along with that, we had training every day back at the Peace Corps compound. So we'd meet back up and do classes on like the cultural norms, what was okay, what wasn't. A lot of language classes, just learning the phrases and sounds and kind of how to interact. And then a bunch on the Peace Corps values and beliefs and safety and all that kind of stuff. And then also just how to be a teacher, because almost none of us were teachers before. There was a few, but most of us like myself had never been a teacher. They've kind of picked people based off of their degrees, because in the country of Liberia, there's no real resources. So there was no textbooks, there's no electricity, so there's no internet or anything like that. So all the lessons and all the actual like knowledge base had to come from us. So they picked people with higher level math and science degrees because that's what we were teaching there. So like myself as a chemical engineer, they picked us so that we would have the knowledge base to teach it without really having any materials to help us. So all of the lesson plans and stuff had to come from our brains, but they taught us how to be a teacher. So skills with that and classroom management and all that kind of stuff they taught us, but all the kind of like what we were teaching had to come from our brain, which sounds really intimidating at first, but we had this model school and we got to practice and you kind of figure out your flow as a teacher and what you're gonna act like and what you're gonna do, and you get to try out a bunch of different stuff. So they brought all these kids from the community and put us in a school. They assigned us each a subject and a grade level and all that kind of stuff. So it was like a real thing and we had a test at the end and all that was very, very cool. I enjoyed it a lot because you do get to like experiment with what you want to do as a teacher and all that. So that was a lot of fun and really, really helpful because once you kind of get going and start planning these lessons, it kind of goes in a flow and it kind of happens naturally. So it's a lot less scary than it seems like. And at the end of that model school, we got evaluated on our teaching ability because some schools are tiny and it's easy to manage, or some schools are huge and massive and harder. So they kind of evaluated you on what would fit best for your thing. And then along with that, we had an interview with the directors to kind of figure out what was our best match in the site. So they asked us a bunch of questions and we would rank them on like 1 to 5 and see what fit best. So it was things like if we cared about having to be on a motorbike for a long time to get out to site, what our classroom size we wanted, what the site size, how big of a village we wanted, if we cared about having cell service or not, and if we wanted to be around another volunteer. Put my answers right here if you're interested at all in like kind of what my priorities were when picking a site. So after they figured those out, they would kind of match us with whatever they thought fit best for us to live. Because we've been there for about 2 months and still have no idea where we're actually gonna be living, where we're gonna be teaching, anything at all. So all up until this point, we had no idea of kind of everything. So along with that, you really have to be flexible with Peace Corps and just kind of go along with it because you're not gonna know much while things happen. And then finally the day came where we were gonna figure out our site placement. So basically they painted this huge map of Liberia on the ground and then blindfolded all of us and took us and like spun us around and moved us and put us all over the place and then finally like stuck us in our site. And when they did that, they put this other arm around me and I was like, who is this? Because while we're all like friends and stuff, there's certain people you don't want to spend like every second with. So I was like, whose arm is around me? And I was like kind of freaking out. And then this girl, Mel, and she like said it was her. We both just busted out laughing because we were so relieved that it was each other because we were friends already. And I don't know what made them put us together because everybody else was all alone. That's kind of the norm, is that you go to a site alone and your nearest volunteer is gonna be a couple hours away. So it was very strange that we got put together. But the weird part was I had this dream about 2 weeks before and it was super vivid. So I told all my friends about it and it was like one of the weirdest things that's ever happened to me, that I was gonna be placed at this guy Noah's site. And Noah's a guy who's a year above us, but he was already there. And I was like, I'm gonna go to Noah's site and be with another girl. Literally, we had no information about anything at this point. And then that's exactly where I was placed. I was placed at Noah's site with another girl and I was like, this is so weird because there was 50 something sites that I could have been placed at all over the country in 15 different counties all over the place. And I like dreamed that I was gonna be at my site. So that was something else. That was weird. But we got that site placement and then we still had 2 more weeks of training, and in that time it's kind of focused on your site specific things. And like I said in my other video, there's 16 tribes in Liberia and I was part of the Bassa tribe. So we had to learn conversational Bassa, which was like way different than Liberian English because this is actually now a different language. And then other training and cultural things that were specific to our little area. But I got placed in kind of a very unique part of Liberia because it was the poorest county in Liberia, and Liberia is the poorest country the Peace Corps serves. So I got kind of the extreme of the poorest county in the poorest country of Liberia, and we were stationed in the capital city of that county, but it's also the smallest capital city. So it was about 2,000 people or so. And that was like the big city of our whole county. So then it was the day to finally leave training and go out to our sites. And guys, we were like in a bubble that whole time because we were in the Peace Corps training and we were with our host families and there was markets there and roads. But as you saw in my other 2 videos, like that is not the case of most of the country. So once we actually left, like that's when the real journey started. And that was like crazy getting out there and just the stark contrast of being like in one of the bigger cities to going out to these rural towns where we're actually gonna be living and working. All right guys, so with that, I think that's gonna be the ending of this video. It's kind of a natural breaking point before I get out to my school and I don't wanna turn this into a 30-minute long video. So I'm gonna do a second part coming very, very soon. I hope you guys found this helpful, talking about my experience becoming into the Peace Corps and all the training and went into that. Next time I'll be talking about my school, the other volunteers and all that kind of stuff. So thank you guys for watching. I hope you guys have liked this. I never thought this would turn into 4 videos, but I'm super, super passionate about this and it's one of the most impactful things I've ever done in my life. So I don't wanna leave anything out. So I'm okay breaking it up into these kind of segments and I hope you guys like them too. Go ahead and leave a like if you've enjoyed this and leave a comment down below, maybe any other questions you have about my time living in Liberia and I can hopefully answer them in the next part and I will see you guys soon. Goodbye. So yes, I got so many bribes of students trying to pay for their grades. Students I'd never seen actually show up to my class, but they wanted to pay for that A. And I had so many teachers confused that I wasn't accepting bribes for grades. And I actually had one teacher ask me like, Brother Joseph, so if somebody gets a C in your class, they actually get a C, like you won't help them at all? And I was like, no, like whatever they get. And like that concept is just kind of foreign in their eyes.